Oh, it's an unwritten rule in pro wrestling that if a wrestler is hurt, they carry on with the match. However, sometimes an injury is so severe that the match must be called off. While this can be disappointing to fans in attendance, the match referee literally has no choice in protecting this specific wrestler from further injury. But which times were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 wrestlers who couldn't finish a match. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Number 10. Enzo Amore. A former WWE Cruiserweight champion, Enzo Amore wasn't that great in the ring. Amore infamously broke his leg whilst trying to counter a wrist lock. Nevertheless, he had a ton of charisma that certainly made up for his shortcomings in the ring. Back at the Payback pay-per-view in 2016, there was serious concern that Amore had been badly hurt. During a tag match which pitted Amore and Big Cass versus the Vaudevillains, Simon Gotch threw Enzo into the ring ropes and Amore's head and neck got awkwardly caught in between the ropes. Gotch tried to pick Amore up, but the referee intervened, calling the match off instantly due to his concern. Amore was rushed to the hospital and it was ruled that he had suffered a concussion. Number 9. Umberto. Just like every other major sport, knee injuries are extremely common in pro wrestling. It looked as if a serious knee injury occurred during a match between Sheamus and Umberto back in Raw in 2021. Umberto would perform a sunset flip powerbomb on Sheamus on the outside of the ring. Unfortunately, all of Sheamus' body weight came down on Umberto's knee. Umberto instantly signaled to the referee that something was seriously wrong and that he needed medical assistance. The match was immediately called off in order for Umberto to get some help, and luckily he wasn't badly injured and he would be back on TV in just a matter of weeks. Number 8. Rusev. One of the benefits of WWE Main Event is that it's a taped show. This means that WWE can edit out anything they don't want to feature in the eventual broadcast. However, when injuries occur on the show, WWE usually decides to leave them in. Injuries are a natural part of pro wrestling and they're always going to occur no matter what. On an episode of Main Event back in 2015, future AEW stars Neville and Rusev were having a featured match. Early on in the match, Rusev would begin to hold his bicep and it was clear that something had gone seriously wrong. Rusev quickly improvised by getting himself counted out, and it turned out that Rusev had a proximal bicep tendon rupture. Now, this isn't the worst injury in the world as it has a short recovery time, but nevertheless, it's definitely an injury that puts a pro wrestler on the sidelines. Number 7. Dana Brooke. Following WWE transitioning to a PG product in the summer of 2008, WWE has a strict no blood policy. No blood whatsoever is allowed to be shown in a match without permission from WWE management. If blood does occur during a match, the match will be stopped momentarily whilst the cut can be patched up. Back in 2019, Dana Brooke was wrestling Sarah Logan on WWE Main Event, and Logan would hit a running knee. Unfortunately, Brooke's head bounced off the ring post. Brooke was a bloody mess and it looked like something from the Attitude Era. The blood was so severe that the referee had no choice but to call the match off with immediate effect. WWE decided to keep the match in the actual broadcast, but the match was heavily edited out in order to avoid bleeding being shown on screen. Number 6. Sin Cara. Whilst at times WWE have no choice but to stop matches due to serious injuries, there are times when a wrestler could have continued on. Back in 2013, Alberto Del Rio was wrestling the original Sin Cara on Raw, and Cara decided to get the referee to call the match off due to him dislocating his finger. A dislocated finger is without a doubt a painful injury, yet Cara could have easily finished the match. The original Sin Cara and Del Rio weren't exactly best friends, and Cara ended the match in this manner added further fire to their heated relationship. When the match was called off, the referee had to physically restrain Del Rio from continuing the match, so it was clear from Del Rio's point of view that the match could have continued on. According to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, there was a ton of heat on Cara backstage for ending the match, and this also seemed to coincide with the end of his push. Number 5. Edge. Over his iconic and legendary career, Edge has had his fair share of injuries. Most of Edge's infamous injuries have actually taken place at a house show, and they've been so serious that Edge had to stop wrestling immediately. Back in the summer of 2004, Edge was wrestling Chris Jericho when he tore his groin. The referee stopped the match, and as a result of his injury, he was forced to surrender the Intercontinental Championship. Fast forward to 2009 and Edge was wrestling his arch nemesis Jeff Hardy when he suffered a torn Achilles tendon. This was one of the worst injuries possible and it resulted in Edge missing a substantial time away from WWE television. This also came at a time when Edge formed an alliance with Chris Jericho, and naturally due to Edge's injury, WWE had to go back to the drawing board with their creative direction. Number 4. Tegan Nox. The 2018 Mae Young Classic was a celebration of women's wrestling, but it was also responsible for the heartbreak for Tegan Nox. Nox was wrestling Rhea Ripley in a tournament when she suffered a number of injuries. Nox's injuries included a torn ACL, MCL, and lateral collateral ligament damage. The match was quite rightly stopped, so Nox could quickly get help she so badly needed. What was even worse for Nox was that she was initially booked to be in the finals of the tournament, but her injuries prevented this from happening. She would discuss this injury during an interview on the Wrestling Friends podcast and stated,
"Yeah, that's why it made everything that much more heartbreaking for me. I don't know how much I can say, but, definitely going to the finals. And I think, knowing that the finals would be at Evolution, and I think the most heartbreaking thing was knowing that Molly Holly was going to be there.
Oh.
Get to wrestle in front of Molly Holly and have her watch my match. I think that's what was such a heartbreaking thing for me. I was going to go wrestle Tony, who the last time we had wrestled was in front of maybe 15, 20 people. And that's a push to wrestling at the first ever women's Evolution in front of thousands and also in front of a ton of legends. It was heartbreaking. I think that's more so than the injury was not getting that opportunity.
Number 3, Daniel Bryan. Over the past 15 years or so, WWE have put extra focus on making sure that wrestlers don't suffer any long-term damage from concussions. WWE regularly tests for concussions, and if a wrestler suffers a concussion, they're usually pulled from in-ring action. During a match between Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton on Raw in 2013, Bryan suffered a stinger in the match, and the WWE doctor ruled that Bryan was unable to continue. Bryan was absolutely livid with the decision, as when he got backstage, he verbally laid into executive Triple H, and according to Bryan in his autobiography, they almost came to blows. Bryan eventually understood Triple H's perspective, and the two were once again on good terms. Number 2, Neville. Chris Jericho has developed a reputation for being one of the most professional wrestlers of all time. This was on full display in a match against Neville on Raw in 2016. Halfway into the match, Neville fractured his ankle and he was unable to continue. Jericho, being the veteran, decided to change the match on the fly. He would push referee Charles Robinson to get him disqualified. This was great thinking from Jericho, as it was virtually impossible for Neville to walk, never mind continue wrestling. As a result of the injury, Neville would miss out on Wrestlemania 32, where he was initially scheduled to be part of the ladder match for the IC title. And number 1, Paige. Back in 2017, Paige's career would come to a drastic end during a live event match. Paige was taking part in a 6-woman tag match when she was kicked in the back by Sasha Banks. Paige would awkwardly fall down to the ground, grabbing her neck in the process. The match was immediately called off, and Paige would never compete in a WWE ring again. During an interview with Give Me Sport, the inaugural NXT Women's Champion revealed nothing was ever Sasha's fault. She got so much backlash, and even in the ring when we were in there, people are chanting Sasha sucks, and it really upset me to hear that because it wasn't her fault. The thing is with me, right, the move where she kicks me in the back, I'd taken that so many times previously that I was stubborn, and I thought I could still do these kind of things, and I thought my neck was just as strong as it was before, but unfortunately it's not. So I called this move and I told her to do it, and she did it, and unfortunately my neck wasn't strong enough and it snapped all the way back, and it was essentially the same as having a really bad car crash. But there you have it folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who couldn't finish a match. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.